The Mayor and City Council welcome you to the Peoria City Council meeting. As a courtesy to others, please silence all phones. If you would like to address an issue that is on the agenda, or if you would like to speak to the Council regarding a non-agenda item, please complete a speaker request form, which can be found in the front lobby of the Peoria City Council chambers or in the tray to the left of the speaker's podium. Please place the completed speaker request form in the second tray to the left of the speaker's podium labeled Request to Speak. All speakers will have 3 minutes to complete their comments. A countdown clock is easily visible on the left side of the wall behind the City Council dais. Only items listed on the agenda may be addressed by the Council. Since items presented as part of a speaker's request have not been listed on the agenda, and due to the requirements of open meeting laws, the Council will be unable to respond to items presented as part of the speaker's request. However, please be aware that your comments will be noted. The speaker's name will be called to speak at the appropriate time, in the order that the forms were received. Thank you for your interest and participation in the Peoria City Council meeting.
Meeting will now come to order. Please rise for a moment of quiet reflection and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Vice Mayor Edwards.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk will please call the roll.
Mayor Carlett.
Here.
Vice Mayor Edwards.
here.
Councilmember Finn.
Here.
Councilmember Binswanger.
Here.
Councilmember Patina.
Here.
Councilmember Hunt.
Here.
And Councilmember Dunn.
Here.
Thank you. This is the final call to submit speaker request forms. If anyone would like to address an issue on the agenda, or if you would like to speak regarding a non-agenda item, we have speaker request forms available in the lobby, next to the speaker's podium, or from the city clerk, sitting at the end over here. If you would fill out that form and return it to the clerk, you will be recognized at the appropriate time. The first item on the agenda is the consent agenda. All items listed on consent are considered to be routine or have been previously reviewed and or discussed by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If the presiding officer receives a timely notice of a request for removal, an item may be removed from the consent agenda for consideration on the regular agenda. And tonight's consent agenda includes an item that requires a public hearing. So if there is any members of the public who wish to address the public hearing on the consent agenda, please fill out a speaker request form and place it in the bin next to the podium or give it to the city clerk. And I've received no request to speak with regards to the consent agenda. So do I have a motion on consent?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. And it passes unanimously. All right, we will now move on to the regular agenda and new business. That is item 4R, redistricting. Our format for this evening will be to hear from Peoria staff and our legal team. They will be giving a presentation to us. Then members of the public will speak, and then members of the City Council. I would also like to note that the consensus of the City Council is to waive attorney-client privilege on a document pertaining to the Voting Rights Act. So we will begin. Before we begin, I would just like to address our members of the public who are at this meeting. This is a formal meeting. There will be no booing or clapping in the audience. This is a formal meeting. If you are going to make inappropriate noises and activities, we will stop the meeting and you will be asked to leave by that wonderful officer in the back. We will now begin with a presentation from Peoria staff. Mr. Tyne.
Great, thank you, Mayor and Council. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. So just one additional item for tonight, and that is to talk about the redistricting process. With the federal decennial census occurring And those numbers now in the City of Peoria Charter requires the city reestablish its district boundaries going forward. And that, of course, makes sense. As we know, there was a 24% increase in population from 2010 to 2020 in Peoria. So that, of course, is going to have an impact on our district boundaries. Now, it's important to know there are very specific federal and local requirements that we have to comply by. Examples of that, we have to be close in population for each of the districts. We have to have be fairly represented. There's aspects of community of interest that will be coming up. We have to ensure, of course, that we're not discriminatory in any way. One of the things that we also have to remember is that this is a municipal government. So it's a little different than some of the redistricting processes that we've seen in the newspapers at different levels. This is a nonpartisan group. We focus less on the either or and more on some of the best practices, of which we're going to hear about what has been our effort in that area. Now, one of the things I think that's important as we look at the map on the screen of Peoria is that it can be difficult to go through the redistricting process. Just given our geographic orientation, we're a very long city. You can see in the middle of the city, it is very narrow, as well as we have county islands that are interspersed into different locations. And so as a result, that can make for a set of challenges with all of the different priorities that we all have and the values that we have. So redistricting means trade-offs. It means decisions with different competing interests because there's a number of different variables that we have to balance. So to help us navigate that, we do have our own staff champions here. We have Andy Granger, our Deputy City Manager, as well as Jen Stein, our Communications Director and Acting Economic Development Director, who have been the champions throughout the process for the 2020 redistricting. So with that, I'll pass it to Mr. Granger.
Mr. Granger, before you begin, I would just like to make an announcement. I should have done this earlier. We have Spanish and American Sign Language interpreters available this evening. If there is anyone who would like to request these accommodations, feel free to speak to the clerk. Thank you. Go ahead, Andy.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Before I turn over to Ms. Stein, who's going to go through the detailed process that we followed throughout this entire redistricting process, I just wanted to give an overview about the process that we followed. In August, we presented to Council and outlined almost the exact same process that we followed in 2017 for the mid-decade census redistricting effort. You passed an ordinance at that time for us to follow on how we were going to do our redistricting. We have followed that process that you adopted exactly as we stated we would. We are now here today to hear Council discussion and direction on adopting a final map for the city from the 5 shortlisted maps. Based on legal advice, all 5 of these maps conform to all federal and local requirements. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Stein to go over the process as we discussed.
Thank you, Mr. Granger. Good evening, Mayor, Council. So I just want to go through a recap of the timeline. As you know, we had a very robust and comprehensive public outreach process in a condensed time because our census data was not delivered. Normally it's delivered in April, it was delivered 6 months late this year. So starting in August, as Andy mentioned, the council adopted the council criteria, and then we went ahead and started our first round of public outreach. We had 10 public meetings, 8 in person, 2 virtual. And then after the first round, where we provided education and information on how to participate in the process, then we received public maps. After those public maps were submitted, then we went back out for round 2 to receive input and feedback, which you have tonight. And then here we are today, December 14th, to adopt and approve a redistricting map, and then just a couple of dates, April 4th is last day to file for the candidate nomination paperwork, and then the new districts will go into effect for the primary election in August. Just to provide background, the City of Peoria is required to adjust district boundaries to provide equal population in each district. So that is why we are redrawing the lines. This has to occur every 10 years. And redistricting in our case shall occur prior to the general election because of our charter provision. Sorry, I just skipped. Okay, we'll just go. Here's our example of our current council districts. We went through this process in 2015 and adopted the new map in 2017. And again, I just want to go back to give you the population history to see that we have had significant growth. Approaching 190 I say at this point, we're at 191,000, probably past it. Okay, I am just going to start over our presentation, sorry. Okay, sorry. Population, as you know, the whole goal is to equalize population in each district. So you're going to have some districts that gain and some that lose population during this exercise. The federal requirements, again, to reiterate, must have substantially equal population, protect the minority voting rights pursuant to the Voting Rights Act, and be contiguous. The council approval criteria should be, districts should be compact, as compactness reinforces the ability of residents, follow visible or man-made boundaries such as mountains, rivers, and roads. Not contain more than one master plan, age-restricted community, preserve communities of interest, strive for continuity in office to minimize voter disruption. Apologize. I'm sorry. I'm just like trigger happy here. Okay, sorry about that. I just wanted to make sure. Oh my gosh, I apologize. Sorry. Just kind of making sure you're all awake. Okay. First round of engagement. We received 39 maps through the online portal. 1 duplicate was removed. 15 maps were eliminated for higher than acceptable population. So there was a population deviation more than 9%. 6 plans weren't contiguous. 1 map was removed due to an incumbent not in the district, which is part of the council adopted criteria. 9 plans had more than 1 age-restricted community. 7 maps were left, and 5 were selected based off of the amount of variation. Okay, the Voting Rights Act compliance. Section 2 of the VRA prohibits adopting or maintaining voting practices that result in a denial or abridgment of the right to vote on account of race, color, or membership in a language minority group. The final maps do not violate the VRA. The city is not able to construct a majority citizen voting age Hispanic district. I want to then also add all 5 maps comply with the federal requirements and the council adopted criteria.
So as part of the redistricting process, we have received excellent legal advice from Mary O'Grady with Osborne Maladon and Corey Langhofer with Statecraft. Each of these attorneys have significant professional backgrounds and expertise in elections and redistricting. They've been doing it for many, many years. As you recall, Mary was the outside counsel during Peoria's last successful redistricting effort. Based on conversations with all of our consultants, all 5 maps are appropriate to move forward, and the city staff previously indicated meet the applicable legal requirements.
Yeah, if I may.
Yes, please.
Chime in on an additional legal aspect, and so let me know if this goes in. There has been quite a bit of discussion lately regarding one of the technical analysis that we had done as a city that was being discussed in executive session. Namely, I'm referring to one of the analysis that we did to comply with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And it suggests, again, the Voting Rights Act, as Ms. Stein had said, is that if certain criteria are made, a Hispanic majority minority district would have been required. As we discussed, that requirement is not necessary. Regardless, the city did undertake what's called a racial polarization voting analysis, or RPV analysis. Now, the term does seem a bit strong, but essentially in reality, what it's looking at is individual behaviors of our citizens and looking at their demographics and comparing minority populations and how it votes versus the majority specific population. And like a number of districts in Arizona, the study that we had, this RPV study, suggests that Peoria does indeed have some polarization. So that said, with the language, which is pretty strong language, and also a number of questions that were brought up by our staff and legal staff, we wanted to make sure we had the opportunity to discuss this with the city council and the legal implications, make sure that they had the perspectives that were there before we went out to the general public. And so with that, as Mayor Carlett had mentioned, the council consensus after the discussions is to release that information as well as broader legal analysis and backup information. So what will be available to the public, likely by tomorrow, and we'll be discussing this today, will be a general overview of the redistricting legal requirements for both how it impacts the federal requirement and specifically within Peoria. And then in addition to that, we'll have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that is here tonight, the demographic information related to the maps, the geographic maps themselves, public feedback, all public feedback from the redistricting maps. This haystack RPV analysis will be available, as well as Hispanic voter age population map of Peoria by precincts. So just to be sure that you all know what some of the discussion is to ensure our council is protected from a legal aspect. Does that sound correct?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 5 maps, again, were under consideration that were submitted through our public process. And when these 5 maps went out to the public, and we did receive a number of responses. "69 responses came in through various systems, whether it's through the email, redistricting email, the online portal, or in-person forms that we collected during the public open houses. There were some common themes that we noticed when we were evaluating the responses that we received. When I indicate clear diversity, there was just a lot of people that liked a lot of different maps. Keep community interests intact was another common theme. Keep communities together geographically. And a couple remarks indicated more for future consideration, removing the one age-restricted community because it was difficult to navigate or maneuver, redrawing the lines around it. So that was something that, again, a few mentioned for the next time. And then just wanted to recap the project timeline. And I want to acknowledge a couple of people who have been very helpful during this process. Eddie and Marcy, who are behind me, are with Research Advisory Services, who are our consultant, and our outside counsel, Mary O'Grady and Corey Longhofer, who also provided expertise and help to ensure that, and help guide us to ensure that these maps are, again, compliant with the federal requirements and our council criteria. So this concludes our presentation. Thank you, Mayor, Council.
Okay, thank you. We will now move on to members of the public, and I have a number of speaker request forms here. I will ask you, when I call your name, please come up to the podium, and you will, which I'm pointing to right here, and you will have 3 minutes to speak, and there will be a time clock over here to the right of me, your left. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and I will ask that you give us your name and address for the record. So the first speaker request form is for Mr. Edward Molina.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. My name is Edward Molina. I live at 8686 West Via Lindo Drive in Peoria, 85383, currently in the Mesquite District. I attended the very first meeting on the 11th of October up in the Mesquite District. And at that session, I asked a number of questions, got answers. 2 days later, I submitted my submission for redistricting, a map that I entitled EPM 0002. It was acknowledged received. I got some good feedback on that in terms of what I had provided. I had reduced the populations, and everything was within plus or minus 3% of the 31,800 and change that's a target goal. About a week later, I received a subsequent email that said, oh, you were using the wrong data. The wrong data was on the site. To me, as a former business owner, that is absolutely unforgivable. You don't put out for public consumption something that is not ready to be publicly consumed, period. Shortly thereafter, I asked for additional information. I received the information that, okay, the data is correct now. You can go back out there and submit another map. I don't think I did. I was pretty upset at that time. But subsequent to that, I submitted a request for all data, all demographic data, all age data, all voting data that was being used for the last month and a half, and that was on the 11th of November. For the last month and days, I've been receiving 1 or 2 emails a week saying, we're working it, we're working it, we're working it, which I understand. It's that there's a lot of data. Today, at 11:30 this morning, I received a data dump of 1.6 gigabytes of data. I can't review or analyze that data in the amount of time allotted. To me, that is unsatisfactory. I would not have expected any employee of mine to hide that data, and I'm not saying that it was hidden, but not to make that data available with more time to respond. Which brings me to the other issue of the information that's going to be made available to the citizens not being available until tomorrow or at some time after the selection is made, as I understand. So with that, thank you very much. Thank you for your kind indulgence.
Thank you. I have a speaker request form from Mike Rogers. Mike Rogers?
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you pertaining to the City of Peoria redistricting maps. I am Mike Rogers, and I am a proud resident of the City of Peoria and Pine District since 1994. 27 years. From day one, I have been involved in my community, and my wife and I chose to raise our family in Peoria. For what Peoria represented then and was moving towards, a community with smart leadership and a vision to enhance the quality of life for all residents, the poor, the rich, north, south, east, and west. Over the years, there have been a few ups and downs, but yet continually striving for a better quality of life for one and all residents of the city. I have done my due diligence in reference to the redistricting maps, and I have also read what was reported in the Arizona Republic pertaining to this matter. A nonpartisan process has become flawed and partisan with infighting from the top down, talking from mayor to city employees. This has to stop. Let's begin to right this ship and do what's right by the citizens of Peoria and vote for a plan that is equitable to every person in this city. I'd like to end by finishing with a quote from Jimi Hendrix. When the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. We need to start getting together and working together to go ahead for the betterment of all people of the city of Peoria. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker request form is from Joe Kluwer.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Joe Kluwer. I live in Vistancia, Peoria. I don't have a written speech. I found out about this issue, specifically the Haystack report, by reading the Arizona Republic. It's concerning to me that a report as important as this was withheld from the citizens. a report that they paid for, a report that they deserved to have before they started making decisions as to which map they felt was appropriate or not. You can't make an informed decision if you don't have the information to make that decision from. What I heard the city manager say with regard to the need to address legal issues and client attorney privileged information, what have you, you can do all of that, reference that report, but the community had a right to see that report. They should have seen that report. They did not. It's wonderful that you released it today, but quite frankly, in the words in the article, it's irrelevant at this point because apparently the decision is going to be made today as to what map we're going to go with. I've had some history with this city with regards to public records. It's not a favorable history. There's manipulation, there's the delay tactics, there's stall. I'm aware that that is happening again to one of our other council persons sitting on here, and I'll say her name. Councilman Dunn has made repeated requests for public records and has been stymied at every step. Give the duly elected official the records, the data that she's asking for. You guys are wonderful at putting together PowerPoints and putting the spins on topics such as today's redistricting, but when people ask for the data so that they can look and examine for themselves what it says and thereby ask important, relevant questions, please have the common respect and frankly the duty under the law to release those records. I think there might have been a complaint filed with the Attorney General's office with regards to the failure to provide the haystack report. It's a shame when you have to resort to outsourced sources to try to get public records that we're entitled to as citizens. Representative Dunn, keep asking the questions. It's important. Thank you.
Before we move on, the comments that are inflammatory and include words like manipulation must be dealt with since they are false. And anyone else who wants to talk about a newspaper report as evidence that there is wrongdoing needs to understand that newspapers do not always print the full facts and the full truth. So I will like to call on our attorney or our legal team to talk about if there was manipulation with regards to public records requests, and certainly also with public records requests in the past.
So, Mayor, I have an ethical obligation under the rules of professional conduct, as well as in representing my client, to make sure I am doing it. I have a duty of candor, a duty of honesty, and to be ethical. And so I can assure you that I have not been engaged in manipulating the release of information.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, the next public records, or excuse me, speaker request form is from Eva Osuna.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm back to talk about the maps. I'm a little disappointed because the last time I was here, I didn't realize that there was other data that I could have been looking at besides the maps to make the best decision. In fact, the maps were so unclear. You couldn't tell what the streets were, you couldn't really tell where the boundaries were. So to be expected to decide on a map that's going to be in the best interest of the entire city was a difficult task. Thank goodness that I did receive the data that should have been presented from the get-go. The meeting I attended was Wednesday. At that meeting, there was a gentleman in the audience who asked Ms. Sissons, where is the data that comes with the maps so that we can determine the best map? I'm a retired teacher. I would never give my students a test and not have given them all the information to test on. There was just no way that anyone could pick a map without the data. Eventually, it got posted on the website, so that's beside the point. Today, I'm here because I'm asking each of you to pick the best map, the fairest map. It's important. It is bigger than any of us here. The reprocessing process is bigger. It's about people. It's not about me. It's about the community. And I will, I grew up in Varney Track. That is where I came from. I'll never forget that I came from, and I will fight and advocate for those people. Map 1 and 3 are the only maps I see suitable. Because when I spoke to the people in Varney, you're going to move that, and I know there's words that have been said, put Varney in Pine when the surrounding neighborhoods are their network. As it is a neighborhood that needs a lot of assistance. And I have never left. I moved out of there. I've never left. I keep going back. And I'm asking you to really be mindful about what map you choose. And I'm saying 1 and 3 are the best maps at this point. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'm going to address your comments about not receiving data. This book was put out as public information, and behind every single map that is in this, which is the last 5, there is a page of data that has all of the demographics, population, all of the minority demographics, and all of the information. And this was not only put out as public record, but it was accompanying every map. If you'd like to come back to the podium, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I do understand that that packet did come out eventually, but when I was looking at the maps initially, it was not available. And fortunately, somebody in the community, we all talk with each other, even though you may live in Estancia or down here, there's people that are communicating. Eventually, I got the notes and the data. So
thank you.
I was able to take a better look at the maps. But on Monday, when the first meeting came, there was no data. It didn't get posted until Wednesday. So, thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker request form is from Leslie McMorrow.
My name is Leslie McMorrow, and when I arrived here tonight, I lived in the Acacia District. I guess at the end of the night, we'll see if I still do. I had a different speech prepared to give tonight, but after seeing the public comments and the feedback from the maps, I realized I don't need to. The public has spoken louder than I can about their preferences. After removing the 6 comments that have, or the 6 lines that have absolutely no comments in them, 54% of the comments specified a preference for maps 1 and 3 versus 27% of a specified preference for maps 2, 4, or 5. That choice seems pretty clear to me. It's also important that local leaders listen to their constituents. Federal leaders and state leaders right now, the public has a high frustration level with them because they don't listen to the people that they are supposed to represent. Instead, they seem to vote for their own personal agendas and their own pet projects. So you say that you're the kind of leaders that listen to the people in your community, and I hope that is true. And in this case, they've chosen maps 1 and 3, and I hope you will vote for one of those. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker request form is from Catherine Gatrost.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all on these redistricting maps. I lived in Peoria for a long time. I really love this city. The maps, it's going to make a difference between 1 and 5, between 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It's going to make a change in every single community. But from an aesthetic point, I really like map 3 due to voter deviation, due to it growing with several different districts, allowing it to grow together. I just hope tonight that you guys vote with what's best and what you think is best. And just be honest with the map. You know, when you guys work together up here, magic happens in the city, and it's beautiful. But during this mapping session, I hope you guys make the clear and best conscious decision. And moving forward, try your best to work together. I mean, sometimes we may not like each other's decisions or what we do, but when you guys work together, it's beautiful. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm calling Lee Baker to the podium.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Certainly do appreciate this opportunity for coming tonight and being able to address the council this evening. I'm new to Peoria. I'm a retired military and new to the city of Peoria. And the reason I came, I was doing somewhat of an exercise when I heard about the mapping, and I had opportunity to take a look at the maps that were being presented, and with the sensitivity in our nation to gerrymandering, then I felt compelled to take a look and come to the council and see how things are done in Peoria. What I found just from listening to the individuals that have already spoken, seeing the conduct of the council on this evening, it was somewhat disheartening in some ways, but somewhat enlightening and educational in other ways to see how business and public service is done. Some things that I've taken from this, and that's really what I want to share in my time, is simply this. Government, the best governments, what I learned in the military is proper protocol, procedures, things like that. And what I've seen expounded on even this evening is the fact that trust is built on truth, which is fostered by transparency. And what I came for this evening, because I could not decipher for myself what these maps meant. I'm not a native of Peoria, but I do understand that redistricting is a very important process, not only for funding, but for child education, things and services in your community. And I wanted to just get an idea and hear from the members for voting. That's really what I came for, is to hear the reasons for the choices that are going to be made tonight. I don't know if that is going to happen. I would hope it would happen, and it seems like the public and the individuals that are here this evening would really like to hear why these maps, or whatever map is going to be chosen, why that map is going to be chosen. What is going to be the outcome of choosing one map over another map, such that we can, like I said, foster that transparency and be able to understand the decisions that are being made. So that's why I'm here this evening, and I'm looking forward to hearing from any of the council members, the mayor, for why the decisions were being made, because it's very difficult to hold individuals accountable if we don't have the transparency and understand the decisions or the reasons why decisions were being made. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have a final speaker request form for Brian Morris.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Many of you up there know me in the community. I've been a resident of Peoria for many years, and I consider myself to be somebody who is constantly giving back to the community. So I hope that in your decisions that you're making here with this redistricting, that you're aware of the importance of giving back to your community, and that you keep that in mind first and foremost, as I have continued to do in my time in Peoria. To be clear, I, along with many of our citizens here in Peoria, support Map 1. We strongly reject Map 4, and that has come out. You've heard there's been no real support for Map 4 at this hearing, and I don't see it in many of the community events that we attend. And I have spent several weeks going through these community events that we've been partaking in, interviewing people and talking with people and trying to educate people about the maps. And what's amazing to me is how many people have devoted time and effort to understanding the maps to be able to speak intelligently and articulate why they're concerned about them. We strongly reject it as it really draws out the two candidates for the Acacia District. It divides the oldest Hispanic community in the oldest Hispanic community in Peoria. In Friday's Arizona Republic article, Councilmember Bensbacher, you stated, and I'm quoting you from this article, that you attended the public meetings and engaged with the citizens, but did not push any map on anyone. Councilmember Bensbacher, I fully believe this is a lie. Not only did you push map number 4, you pushed it on many of the citizens here in Peoria, and you did it at all the multiple meetings. What makes it worse is that map 4 divides the city's communities. That is the oldest Hispanic community that needs representation and should remain intact in representation. And on that regard, I hope you guys really consider the fact that we have stood up here and advised that, hey, map 1 and map 3 is the best representation of what's going to be best for Peoria. And it's important that you keep the constituents in mind when you're up there serving your public duty. Again, I have a lot of respect for the council members. I've met with many of you individually. I've met with you in public functions and personal functions and had a chance to speak with you. And I hope that you know me as a person will take that in consideration, that I wouldn't come up here and speak to you without have done some research and having a very strong conviction about this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, those are all the speaker request forms that I have. And we will now move on to comments from our city council. Members of the council, do you have any comments? Mr. Patena?
Thank you, Mayor. Before we get this meeting started, I'd like to just say that today we're going to be voting on one of 5 maps. There has been, I've heard rumors that this council, this mayor and this council were the ones that drew up these maps. That simply is not the case. The public drew these maps up. We had nothing to do with them. We didn't get involved with them. And I want to be real clear about that. This is not something that was drawn up by the city council or the mayor. It was drawn up by citizens in Peoria. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Dunn?
Yes, Mayor?
Oh, I see your name up there. Did you not wish to speak?
Oh, I do wish to speak. I was just giving other people a chance. I didn't press a button. I think Vicki pressed her button now.
Councilmember Hunt? Councilmember Dunn, you might need to press clear.
There we go. Well, I'm really happy to hear from everyone that was here tonight. And I do want to clear up a few things of a wrong assumption. I have been on council for 15 years, and I have withstood 4 elections and 1 recall election. I am not concerned about anybody that would run against me. I respect anyone who wants to run for public office, and I know that I have to do my work in every election. But I would never, ever, ever try to get rid of competition, okay? And those of you that know me know that I am a truth teller and that is the absolute truth. Another misconception that is that the Varney district is going to be divided. That's just not true. That's absolutely geographically not the case. I've represented Varney for 15 years. I love that district. I would hate to lose it out of Acacia, but there's a bigger picture to be seen here than my district. And I've studied these maps every day since I've gotten them. They're at my place where I drink my coffee and read the morning newspaper, and I study them every day. And as a representative on this council, I'm obliged to do what I think, in my interpretation, is best for the entire city of Peoria. Not just what I would want, or not just what I think is best for my district. I don't think any of these hurt my district. But I do have preferences. I would love to keep Varney in my district because I love those people. I've worked with them for 15 years, and Varney is just doing great right now. The boundary of Varney and anything that you want from the original town site is 81st Avenue to 79th Avenue and Cactus to
Cherry Hills.
Cherry Hills. That's it. It doesn't go to 83rd. that's the boundary. It's not divided in any way. And there's nothing to say that another council person wouldn't love that district and work in it as much as I have. If it gets moved, we're moving an entire district. Well, we're not moving the district, but we're moving their representation. And I have every confidence that wherever that would go, that they would get very good, they're getting very good staff help now. My other decisions, as I say, were based, of course, I care about my district, but the council, as well as the law, had set up certain requirements for the maps. And it wasn't this council, as far as I remember, but it was adopted by a council at some time in the last few years, that we keep areas of interest together, and that we abide by certain natural boundaries such as Happy Valley Road, and there are some others. So in looking at these, map 1 divides Desert Harbor. Desert Harbor is a long, thin district, just like City of Peoria is a long, skinny city. And on map 1, it would be divided between Pine and Palo Verde. That is not a good thing when people don't know across the street who their council member is. Map 2 doesn't respect the natural boundary of Happy Valley Road. West Wing community is divided. The Meadows community is divided. Map 3 does not respect the boundary of Happy Valley Road, and the Meadows community is divided. Map 5, the Meadows community is divided. Personally, I respect both map 4 and map 5 as far as my district is concerned. But map 4 is the only one that meets all of the criteria that's been placed either by legislation or by the council in prior years. So no communities of interest are divided, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Councilmember Dunn?
So I had asked for the the haystack racially polarized voting report to be released 8 different times before this vote today. November 16th, November 29th, December 1st, December 2nd, December 8th, December 9th, December 11th, and December 13th. December 13th, I sent an email to the mayor asking for the haystack racially polarized voting report to be released to me because my other attempts had been denied based on attorney-client privilege. So in the one of my asks to the city attorney, she said that the mayor is the highest authority, and if I take issue, talk to her. I have nothing further to say on this matter. The mayor, as the highest authority, who has repeatedly said she sets the agenda. She also denied in an email saying that she's ever even seen the haystack racially polarized voting report. This is a little concerning to me. The other thing is these meetings that were transparent to the public, they were done after 6 p.m., except for in my district, which was at 11:30 p.m. People work during that time. Tonight's meeting is at 4, started at 4. Again, the South, we represent hardworking people who have jobs and would like to be here. I got emails from people saying they would have liked to have been here. And it's unfortunate you know, that we didn't have a time that would make it possible for people to attend, all the people that wanted to attend. So with saying all of this, I would like to make a motion to have the vote on maps 1 through 5 suspended for 30 days to give the public time to study the haystack report and for the council to do their own due diligence, because we're voting on maps that we haven't even had all the information for. And there was a comment made by another council member tonight that council didn't submit these maps. I personally know of one council member that told me they submitted the map. So again, I would like to make a motion to have the vote on maps 1 through 5 suspended for 30 days to give the public and the council time to review the information not provided previously.
Yes, can I have some legal advice, please?
Yes, there would have to be a second on that motion.
Do we have a second on her motion?
And I will also take the opportunity to remind members not to discuss information that was provided to you as attorney-client privileged information. But anyway, yes, there will need to be a second.
Do we have a second?
Can I move for just a little bit of discussion, if that would be appropriate? I do have a question regarding that.
Yes.
I don't believe there's a timeline that, unless I'm wrong, is there a timeline that will allow for a 30-day? I'm under the impression this has to be at the county election office at a certain date, and we would not be able to delay. I just need to make sure that people understand that, or I understand that before I either second or don't.
That's correct. There's a December 15th deadline that the county has set for this information to be provided to them. So,
As the mayor, as the staff had talked about, is we had the truncated process this time, given the late entry for census information. So as a result of that, we put the process forward to all of the council. That was discussed in numerous meetings as far as what the process was. There was a big interest in making sure that we had a public process that went out twice, a two-step process that you don't always specifically see. But that does mean that it would mean that once we have all of that information, once we've gone through all of the scrutiny, that it would be for a decision with a quick turnaround. So to clarify that.
Thank you. So we do not have a second for that motion, and so the motion dies. All right, we will move on. Michael Finn, did you still want to speak?
Yeah, I would. I really respect the gentleman who came up and said, I'd like to hear from all the council members on their opinion. I thank you for that. I think that's very important. So my first question in looking at the maps is, do they comply with the voter rights as well as our council criteria? So I just want to kind of explain my thought process as I go through it, if you would allow me a couple of minutes to do that. So I think human nature for all of us is to sort of look at the district that you represent and see what your immediate feelings are about that district, and it either passes muster for you or it does not pass muster for you. So my thought process in looking this, and just full honest transparency, I looked at one, and the jagged nature of my district on the southern border, along with Acacia's jagged border, was somewhat of a non-starter for me. I looked at it and just thought, of all of the maps, this was the most difficult to explain why somebody on this corner of a street had a certain council member and somebody directly across the street had a different council member. So it wasn't even splitting a homeowners association or a master plan community in half. It's just something that I couldn't get my arms around, the jagged nature of that. So I also looked at the contiguous nature of Willow. I still can't understand how that is considered to be contiguous. I don't see where the connection line is on the Willow district, but it's not my district. Okay. Let's see it, but anywho, that was my thought process on that particular map. I looked at map 2. We've got 3 different representatives who are representing citizens on Peoria Avenue alone. So it just seemed like everything kind of came down and created jagged on the southern end of that particular map, and I wasn't a fan. of that one. For me, Palo Verde was okay on Plan 3. I really have no complaints whatsoever on Plan 3. It puts Palo Verde back together the way that I think it should have been in the beginning, and it keeps Desert Harbor, and if you're not familiar with Desert Harbor, it is a master plan community that goes from Thunderbird Road pretty much up to Bell Road. It's just a massive community that I think should stay together. It was not together in the last district redistricting. We were not all full on agreement in the last redistricting. I think it went 5-2, 4-3, something like that, which is okay. It's okay to disagree. But I do like 3 in that respect. I do like 4 in that respect. And then on map 5, again, that would be cut with a little jagged, I'm not sure what I would call that. It looks like a stiletto knife cutting into off of the Ironwood district, so I wasn't a fan of 5. I'm okay with 4, except that, I'm okay with 3, except that I think it breaks apart some sections. Mesquite coming too far low down, just inexplicably past Happy Valley Road. I don't understand that. And then it cuts up a master planned community up in the Willow district that I think should probably stay together. So that's my thought process on where I'm thinking on the different maps. And I don't want to speak for other people in their particular districts, but as far as I'm concerned, as I looked at these 5 maps, that was the thought process that went through my head. And again, I thank the gentleman that came up and said, hey, we want to hear what your thoughts are on each of these maps. That's mine.
Thank you. Councilmember Binsbacher.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have some thoughts. I definitely concur with a lot of what Councilmember Finn said and Councilmember Hunt. A couple other things that I pointed out when I'm looking at that I see when I'm looking at these maps is, number 1 is the Willow District is contiguous, not really, by a thread in some areas. And number 3, I think made more sense, definitely, except that it splits up a community of interest. All of the maps, except for number 4, split up communities of interest. Also, number 2, again, it didn't seem like the Willow District was contiguous to me in that district. And so those were my additional thoughts on the map. I want to address a couple of things that came up this evening and over the course of the process. I did participate in the process. I did submit a map. My map did not make the cut. The map that I submitted is not one of the 5 maps here. I missed the mark somewhere and did not meet all of the criteria. So my map is not here. I did go to all of the community meetings, and I did have discussions, and I did make myself available to constituents to ask questions, and if they asked me my thoughts, I shared my thoughts. I was not pushing or in any way, trying to, I guess, lie. I don't lie. But this is, and it's very disheartening. I think one of the speakers tonight said, how when you all work together, beautiful things happen. And that is absolutely true. When there's mutual respect, mutual, consideration, and the willingness to listen and have open, respectful dialogue, it's amazing how as leaders, how as any groups, we can continue to move a city forward. This is a difficult process, this redistricting, it really is. And so relationships and mutual respect are more critical than ever. This is part of growing pains. And along the way, when you have to balance the population, which we're required to do by law, balance the population, it can hit some districts harder than others. Terramar in the Mesquite district was my home back in 2020. I did not want to lose that district. I did not want to split that district. I had the option then in the maps that were presented, there was an option to split that district, and I chose not to, and I lost the entire district to the Willow district. But it was better for the community to stay together. And as we continue to grow, hard decisions like that will be made. And that's all part of this process. When we did get these books, all of the demographics, the statistics were included with each map. And I tore that to shreds and looked at that. I had a couple of meetings with some individual constituents, and I had some individual conversations at the meetings that I attended. And one of the things that concerned me the most was the reference to the Hispanic population not being heard and not feeling connected to their city. That really, really resonated with me in a very personal way. And, you know, I have to say, I don't, the fact that there's the perception out there that we do not serve all people was of great concern to me. And I don't see it that way at all. But I'm not living in their shoes. If there are people out there that feel that way, I want to hear from them. And I say this in all sincerity. I am a proud Hispanic woman. I am American of Mexican descent. Second generation, you know, my grandparents came here. They came here through the proper channels, earned their citizenship, and were hard-working citizens of this country. And I in no way want to not be here for the Hispanic community or any community. We are one Peoria. We are one Peoria. We are an elected body that represents districts, yes, but we are one Peoria. And we have to make decisions that benefit all of Peoria. And so if there are truly people out there that feel like they're not connected in some way, I want to hear from those citizens because I'm getting that information secondhand, and I want them to know that I want to hear from them. And you know, I'm going to try to do this in both languages because it's that important to me. Pero yo soy mexicana. Yes, yo soy mexicana. Y si hay personas, mexicanos, personas que no hablan inglés, pero necesitan ayuda, tienen preguntas, yo quiero hablar con usted. Yo quiero ayudar. Por favor, llámame. Llámame a 773-7306. Llámame, porque yo trabajo para todo. Y yo quiero ayudar, y yo quiero hablar contigo. Somos una Peoria. So what I said was that if you are a person, a Mexican, any person that does not speak English but needs help or has questions, I want to hear from you. Gave the number 773-7306. I want to help you. I want to speak with you. We are here for all people. And I take it very, very personally when people make the claim that we are alienating any minority population. We are one Peoria. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Mayor. So I just want to give my personal thought as to, you know, what my preference is and address a couple of the comments. So Councilman Fenn had mentioned not understanding for map number 1 how it is contiguous, and I want to explain that I've had numerous conversations with staff and trying to piece together what is considered the contiguous line for the Willow District from the east to the west, and time again, it is always that it is Deer Valley Road. Even though that it has no homes on it, it is considered a contiguous line. And so if you want more clarification, I'd love to have staff explain that to me, because to me, that didn't make sense as well. But they were able to explain it to me to where as long as it's a road that connects one side to the other side, it counts as contiguous line. Is that correct, Jen? Or Andy?
Yes, that's correct. I think it's Pinnacle Peak Road, but yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. And so with me, my preference would be map number 1. Map number 2 and 3, the reason I don't support those is because they split a community of interest in half. One goes to one district. Literally, the largest HOA in my district would be split in half, and that just makes no sense to me. Map number 4, again, you have one HOA on one side, you have a community on the other side, one being Sun Harbor and the other one being Desert Harbor. Technically, one is an HOA, the other one is not. So even though it may be a community of interest, they're not connected now as a community interest. So for me, that was my thought process as to why map number 4 didn't make sense to me. So again, that was my thought process. I still stick with map number 1, looking at the feedback that we had from staff as far as customer or resident comments. It seemed there's a large number of comments in favor. I believe there's like almost 20 comments in support of map number 1 versus map number 4, I believe had like 14 support comments. And so that, again, just for reasoning and kind of give you guys my thought process as to why I believe map number 1 makes sense. But to everybody else's point, you know, we will get through this, and whatever map is originally or is ultimately decided, I'm fine with it. I mean, you know, we fight for what we want, and then when we don't get it, we move on. And, you know, that's just the way government works. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And so I think I will also specify my reasonings, and it's really very simple. It's communities of interest. So with regards to Varney, you know, based on the historic context survey, which is called the Varney Story, which is a published document, there is borders, 4 borders around Varney, and none of them are divided in any of these maps. So Varney is not an issue. It stays together as a community of interest in all maps. Map number 1 splits the community of Desert Harbor. Map number 2 splits the community of the Meadows in the Willow District, right down the middle too. Map number 3 splits the community of the Meadows, and it also does not adhere to the natural boundaries. When you're looking at how it impacts Happy Valley Road, it comes straight down in just one area. It doesn't make logical sense to me. Map number 5 splits the community of the Meadows. Map number 4 is the only map that does not split any communities of interest. It's the one and only map. And so for that reason, that is the map of my preference. And those are the reasons for it. So, Council, if there is no further discussion, I will wait, 2 people. So, Councilmember Bensbacher, did you want to speak again?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Another point I want to make about the maps is in reviewing the comments and the article that was referenced, I think part of, too, that a lot of focus was placed on potential council candidates. That was the question that was asked of me. And I want everyone to understand that, you know, first of all, I never once, and we didn't discuss this, individuals' addresses. One of the criterias that we have is not to district out a sitting council member. But it's impossible, virtually impossible, and there's no logic behind it to redistrict in consideration of potential council candidates. At this point, anyone that has filed a statement of interest is just that, interested in running for council and a potential candidate. It's not until petitions are filed, signatures are collected and filed with those petitions that they are actually candidates. Anyone can file a statement of interest in the district for an open seat. And there's no way that we can consider those, and it's not appropriate to consider those, because then it doesn't become about the best interest of the citizens in the city and equal representation. It becomes about campaigns and politics, and that does not belong in this redistricting process. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Dunn, did you wish to speak again?
Yes, I do. So we are supposed to, take a look at, up here, majority rules. So, the other thing is the maps there was a process to submit comments. And in that process, there was online form submittals, there was printed forms, and there was emails. And if you tally up all the yeses for maps 1 and 3, they're predominantly, I think on the printed form, there was 85% for 1 and 3. For the online form submittals, there was approximately 49%, email 60%, 1 and 3. And if we want to talk about elections, and Council Member Binsbacher said that, as far as candidates, what about a council member cutting out the competition and putting those two candidates in a different district? Could that be politically motivated? I don't know. We all have to look at all this information. And I'm not saying that it is or isn't, but there are a lot of things that are just not making sense. Why are we not listening to the public? Why aren't we, looking more at maps 1 and 3? And look, if I have to choose a map, which I am today, and I didn't have all the information available to me right before today, I would vote for, Councilmember Edwards says he would vote for number 1. I would vote for either 1 or 3 because that's what the majority of the comments that came in wanted. So that's all I have to say. And based on that, I would move to accept map 1 for vote, to vote on map 1 as being accepted as the map that we are going to use for redistricting processes.
Do we have a second? We have a motion for map 1. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Before we vote, Councilmember Hunt, did you have a comment?
Well, while I respect the people, I really respect the people who took the time to make the comments, I also want to make the point that they represent a tiny, tiny, tiny percent of the residents in Peoria. And this council was voted in by thousands of votes, each of us were, to represent everybody in Peoria. So again, kudos to the few that took the time to do that, but they don't represent the majority of the people who live in Peoria.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second on map 1. Council, would you please vote? And it fails with a 5-2 vote. Since map 1 failed, I will entertain a motion on another map. Councilmember Patena?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I'd like to put up for a vote map number 4.
Thank you. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second on map 4. And map 4 passes with 5-2. A vote of 5-2. Thank you. That concludes item 4R. The next item on the agenda is called to the public for non-agenda items. I have received no speaker request forms for non-agenda items. And so we will then move on to, we have no reports from city manager this evening, do we? So many reports. And so with that, I wish you all a healthy and happy holiday season, and we are adjourned. Pardon me? Did you do it at the time that? Yes, we had a speaker request form cutoff time that was early in the meeting, so it is past that time. Would you like to speak to something that is a non-agenda item? Non-agenda item, you're welcome to speak.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you for the reconsideration. Mayor and council, I am just amazed. Vicki, if you think that you don't have competition, they're waiting for map 4.
Ms. Osuna, this is not a personal time.
Okay, fine.
And we can't have political
I'm very
discussions.
concerned about the Hispanic community. I did go to Council Member Binsbacher 5 years ago, asking you to please represent the Hispanic community. You didn't say you were going to or not going to, but obviously you didn't. I went to you, Mayor Carlot, 3 years ago and said to you that I was not being represented in Acacia because Vicki has not done a good job in Acacia. I went to you 3 years ago and nothing has been done. I went to the Varney Track community in the last couple of days. They have not seen anyone from the city there since the election. They do see the council person driving by because they recognize the car and they tell me what color it is. Thank God for the firefighters that go at Christmas time and deliver gifts to the children in Varney Track. We have to be better than that. I ask for representation. Obviously, I'm Hispanic. I'm speaking for a big community. I know you spoke to people out there, Councilman Binsbacher, to come and talk to you now, but 5 years ago I asked you. And now, this community, the Acacia community, has no chance of having a voice to choose a representative to represent them. Because as far as I can tell, Vicki, I know you, I'm sorry, Councilman Hunt, I know several years ago you went to Claudia Lujan, and when I asked you to represent the Hispanic community a little better, you went to Claudia to ask her how to do that. Acacia, with 41% Hispanics, needs a representative that can hear them, relate to them, and fight for them. There are people that need help out there that are Hispanic.
So a reminder, this is for non-agenda items, right? This discussion was part of the redistricting discussion on the agenda, so just a reminder.
I'm sorry, what?
Just a reminder to keep it to non-agenda items, so I know there was.
Well, at any rate, I am just beside myself with all of this. And like it's not about me, Councilman Binsbacher, it is bigger than me. I never made it about me, this redistricting. Sorry, I forgot. But this whole thing is bigger than me. And unfortunately, there's some people that are going to be the ones that are going to take the brunt of it. Thank you.
Thank you. There being no further comments or business, we are adjourned.